Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mistake-Free Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Marck, and today I'm joined by none other than SBD Housing Solutions Investor Liaison, Mike Sullivant. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. I'm overjoyed. This is great.
Yeah. Hey, look, Mike and I just got back from a trip down to Dallas, Texas, where we were at the Freedom Founders Investor Conference. Mike, for those out there that are unfamiliar with Freedom Founders, do you want to give them a Cliff Notes version of what exactly is the Freedom Founders community?
Yeah, it's a really unique community, honestly, and privileged to be a part of it. But a group of high net worth individuals, mostly doctors, dentists, mostly health professionals, really, are in this community that brings both investor and real estate professionals into the same room for deal flow.
Yeah, that's right. Dr. David Phelps is the founder of the Freedom Founders community and has developed an amazing network whereby he's preaching freedom. And in fact, that's what we're going to talk today, guys, is about his latest book called Own Your Freedom, Sustainable Wealth for a Volatile World. You know, in these meetings, he's trying to allow people to escape the rat race, right? Escape the day-to-day grind of the 9-to-5 that so many dentists specifically, and orthodontists is kind of his niche, find themselves in. And, you know, what he talks about in his latest book is... Well, we're going to dive into all those today. So first of all, let me stop and say, if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a video. And also, we're always trying to educate as many people as possible. So please hit that like button. That helps us immensely to reach our audience. Mike, we're going to do a kind of a book review today. It's something that we've never really done before, but David is a dear friend of mine, and Own Your Freedom came out just a few short weeks ago, and we got to share in his speech about this book while we're there. High level, what was your first take on this concept of owning your freedom?
Yeah, obviously it's super practical, so he breaks it down into some key elements that really makes it easy to absorb. So my first impression was just how easy of a read it was and how practical it was to dive into each piece. And really kind of starts at the top of the big question of why, like why own your freedom? And
that's a big one, right? Why do we want to own our freedom? I think you first have to acknowledge that freedom is under attack in America and all around the world, really. We now get asked or get told when you can work, where you eat, how much money you make, how much money you keep. All of these freedoms that we take so literally as freedoms are now under attack. And so really David's call to action is just to wake up and think through, what's your next and what do you really want to get out of life in general? A clear roadmap is something that he preaches, as well as owning your freedom number. And that's kind of there's 5 principles we talked about today. The first one is own your freedom number. What is the freedom number, Mike?
Yeah, so the freedom number is at what point does my passive income extend beyond my monthly expenses? So finding this number of creating true passive income that is being generated while I'm doing something else, that's the equilibrium. I've passed or met my freedom number, and at that point, my expenses are covered, and
what are your monthly
I'm financially
expenses?
Free. Yeah.
What are your monthly expenses, right? So he tries to get people to dial in, hey, your freedom number should be, what does it take for you to live? And hey, look, let's look at that number from a real perspective. And he coaches you how to analyze and get to a real life number. Too many people think that the old style accumulation method of wealth was simply just invest in the stock market, get as much as you can to accumulate wealth, and then hope you have enough when you start depleting it and spending it in retirement. Clearly, we're trying to escape from the drudgery of a 9-to-5 day-to-day as soon as possible. And, his clarity on the freedom number certainly gets you there. What you realize quickly is it's a lot closer than you first seem.
Yeah.
The second point is the power of association. He talks a lot about collaboration. Mike, your thoughts on the principle number 2, the power of association? Yeah. I'm sure as your first time full in that room and engaging that you really felt the power of that room.
Yeah, it was unique just to have both practitioner in the real estate field as well as investors there actively collaborating. That's one piece of it, but I thought even beyond that, the collaboration of real estate professional one-to-one. There's a bunch of practitioners that are in the full turnkey space, that are in the fund space, all in the room and really all helping each other with a wealth of brain trust, benefiting everybody. So that I think that collaboration really makes everybody better. It makes the investments better for the investors. It makes the community tighter. And very much the energy in that room was so progressive, was so forward moving.
Yeah, and I think that comes from, I would say, having a like-minded approach, but really it comes back to core values. And that's, again, what we'll talk about, in principles before strategies. But having a central purpose and a common theme, which is to own your freedom, it begins there.
Yeah.
Those that are attracted to Dr. Phelps are those that crave some semblance of having control over their financial future. And again, there are 5 freedoms. It's not just your financial future. That's certainly the first. But then there's the freedom of time, the freedom of association, the freedom of health, and then the freedom of self-actualization. And so, clearly these people are all aligned, and that leads to it.
The collaboration additionally there that is so unique is being able to bring really high caliber people from both sides of the equation, investor and practitioner, really getting in that room and being able to give access to all these unique deals that are not really even available in the market in some cases. So I think that collaboration and the community that he's fostered and created there is really unique and pretty special, honestly.
It's interesting. One of David's principles, principle number 3 is, as he states it, is wealth is what you own, not what you do. For those that are actually listening to this on the podcast, will obviously remember from one of the slogans of mistake-free real estate that you don't get rich from what you earn, you get rich from what you own. So very much aligned on our principles in that regard. And, I think that kind of speaks for itself. But, too many people out there think that they're getting wealthy from their day-to-day paycheck. And, clearly the message and the calling with everything that we do and everything that David represents is, guys, you have to own assets in this environment.
There was a cool example that, obviously was this huge standout feature, I think, to me and probably most in the room, was an asset that was purchased back 40 years ago. Dallas, Texas, good location, property that needed remodel, $80,000.
Purchase price,
needed some money in. Now, 40 years later, that property, where it's situated in Dallas, is now worth $2 million. And the rents back then were, $900. Now they're almost $6,000. So just the vehicle of real estate and owning real estate was one of the big, obvious ways to generate wealth passively over time. All that wealth generation was just in the background.
Yeah.
It's just the cherry on top that you don't really realize until you look at where the market is.
Yeah, 2 points there. One, clearly what we preach right from the get-go is, look, real estate is not sexy. It's not the thing that's going to double your income overnight. It's something that takes discipline and time. And those that are disciplined enough to delay their gratification over the course of potentially a lifetime, but certainly for 20 or 30 years, are rewarded with the benefits that real estate have, which is sustained appreciation. And the great thing about real estate is that it has the cash flow on the side. Yes. And one of the things that we preach here at SBD is obviously in all quadrants of available offerings. And again, we have 4 product offerings with single family turnkey assets, our new construction multifamily developments, our multifamily syndications, as well as our investment fund that just generates an 8% return. All 4 are backed by real estate. We believe in the power of 100%. Backing your securities, with good, positive cash flow.
Agreed.
Principle number 4 is entitled Principles Before Strategies and Strategies Before Tactics. What does David mean by principles before strategies, Mike?
I mean, what I took away from is you have to know who you are. You have to have core values before you can go anywhere. Because if I'm less risk tolerant, for instance, I really need to know that about myself before I evaluate an objective for an investment or the strategy to get to an outcome. So being mindful about principles and having wisdom and time and collaboration to really help define those things, and then work it into some actionable goals, some realistic goals that are measurable, and then into some specific tactics to actually go and achieve your goals.
Yeah. To read directly from Dave's book, actually, principles are kind of the big rules, to your point, your code of conduct, your non-negotiables, the guardrails in your life. Strategies are what make the principle practical and actionable. These are what connect your principles to the daily tactics that you execute. And then finally, tactics are the specific action steps taken to accomplish your strategy. Tactics come and go, but your principles remain the same. And I think, again, that's back to what we were talking about earlier about those that share in that common principle. The common thread that weaves through that room is having a passion to own your freedom. And that's certainly something that's come out in David's book.
Yeah.
Point number 5, transferable skill sets. One thing that David and I both believe in is building one's own financial acumen. Never do we push our asset classes or our product offerings or even David's services on one of our clients. It's always about making sure that it's a fit. I truly believe in a win-win scenario. And I know as an investor liaison for SBD, you clearly know that our sales tactics are really not to sell anything at all, but to just educate.
Absolutely. Education is key for anybody. And it comes down to critical thinking. That's kind of a baseline skill to have in evaluating opportunities, evaluating investments, evaluating the many things that'll come your way in life. So building that skill set, for me, kind of at a foundation is start with critical thinking. Critical thinking usually leads to education, leads to more discovery, more knowledge, and that knowledge empowers you to start making decisions, and those decisions, hopefully, with good financial acumen and other skill sets, can turn out into financial freedoms.
Yeah, and those transferable skill sets, I think what David's referencing also is that as a dentist, you have a skill set of operating on someone's tooth, right? And extracting and correcting the miscomings that are happening in someone's mouth. Clearly, they are typically business owners, which is a transferable skill.
Yeah.
They're good with people, which is a transferable skill. They're good at negotiating with suppliers and vendors and insurance companies. That's a transferable skill. But building up skills that are transferable to your next is something that David's felt passionate about. His story, for those that don't know, Dr. David Phelps, he was a dentist for a number of years, and then his daughter fell sick. Luckily, David, for the first, I think he was in practice for about 17 or 20 years. And for that time period, he had been investing heavily in real estate. So he had that cushion. He had that safety and security of positive cash flow that could offset his daily expenses. So now David's so passionate that he had an out. He was lucky. He was, fortunate that he didn't have to just take everything out of the stock market because he was not a stock market guy. He could rely on the cash flow from the assets that he had bought to fund his next, because he sold his practice and spent time with his daughter while she was critically ill. She's since made a full recovery. Look, guys, we know that there's no one-sided coin. We know that there's no one-size-fits-all type investing strategy. But we also know that diversification is just a wise tool, and it's a wise thing to do. So what we would challenge you, and my big takeaways from this book really are to challenge your thinking, to think through and explore what your next may be, and to open yourself up to collaboration and partnerships rather than a do-it-yourself mentality. Mike, while I just pause for a second to acknowledge our sponsor, I will give you a chance to collect your thoughts for one last thinking. This segment of the show brought to you by 1-800-SELL-NOW. For those that are looking for a quick and easy exit from a difficult housing problem, please remember to go to 1-800-SELL-NOW.com or simply call 1-800-SELL-NOW for that fast, easy cash offer on your home. Mike, this book is one that I will keep on the bookshelf. It's one that I know I will give as a gift to those that are searching for answers. A final takeaway from where your thoughts are at on either the book or your time at Freedom Founders.
Yeah, I would say particularly around the book, just the sentiment I would leave with everybody and stepping away from that event is the world is changing at a rapid pace. Investments are changing at a rapid pace. Technology, all these things are evolving, and investing time, resources, and relationships in things like Own Your Freedom and communities like Freedom Founders is really going to pay dividends on helping navigate uncharted territories as we move into the future. So that was one of my huge takeaways, and a big action step for me is to continue to invest in myself, in other resources, and in relationships to help me. So.
Love it. No, that's definitely always a takeaway. To those that are listening that were in the room with us and all our Freedom Founders family out there, we thank you for your continued friendship, support, and we love doing business with the Freedom Founders members. We have found that through David's education and through his continued guidance and mentorship to all those in the Freedom Founders community, we're able to deal with a clientele base that is far more educated than any that we just bump into there off the street. But it is our passion and our desire to continue to educate even more people that don't have the ability or are not a dentist or an orthodontist in that side of the group. So for those that are looking to explore more about how you can own your freedom, please go to ownyourfreedom.com to click on David's and buy David's book. Or similarly, please remember to watching this YouTube channel or to like, subscribe, hit the notification button. If you're listening on audio, I would encourage you to also pull us up on the YouTube channel. Okay, that's it from here. Another successful episode of Mistake Free Real Estate Podcast. Mike, thank you for joining me today. It's always a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
You're listening to Mistake Free Real Estate Radio, the authority in passive real estate investing. No late night calls, no clogged drains, no tenant nightmares. Take the passive investor's approach to real estate investing and trust a turnkey professional. Learn more at mistakefreerealestate.com. Until next time, remember, you don't get rich from what you earn, you get rich from what you own.